Welcome back to A to the K's WrestleTalk podcasts. You're here once again with the showstopper. It's me, Anthony. And with me as always, he's just a sexy boy. He's not your boy toy. It's Carl. Hello, Carl. How are we doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for the HBK reference. Hello, all you fellow A to the Canaanites. And let me ask you something, brothers. What you gonna do when this episode of A to the K WrestleTalk runs wild on you? Etc.
I love it. You're taking your vitamins. You've been hitting the gym.
You saying your prayers, tell you?
That was this, saying your prayers. I knew I missed one. And wild it is, Carl, because we've got a hell of a week in terms of the news, as I'm sure many people will know by this point.
Yes.
Other than that, obviously, we've got our usual fun-filled, action-packed day. We've got our This Week in Wrestling, which, as a bit of an experiment this week, we've retooled it a little bit to try and make it a bit more streamlined. Because obviously, we are a little bit after the fact when we put them up anyway. We still love talking about the week in wrestling, but hopefully this will prove to be a little bit more digestible instead of being a few hours long like we like to do. We have a hell of a one for the news. That'll probably run for about 6 hours. And then, as promised, this week we're going to be talking about our favourite Royal Rumble or greatest Royal. To be honest, Carl, I've been thinking about this one. I don't think I can beat you. I'm going to insist that I go first. It'll be one that I think you'll understand the merits in why I've picked it, but I don't think I've got you beat anyway. So I'm not even competing with you this week.
Mine is like the reading material for any lecture on pro wrestling anywhere in the world. Mine is a Royal Rumble that will never be beaten, in my opinion. So I'm keen to hear what you're bringing to the table.
Well, to be honest, I've gone for a slightly different approach, and okay. You'll understand when we talk about it. We'll do the news first. We'll get that out of the way, but you'll understand, hopefully, where I'm coming from with this. Because there's a lot of people who probably won't suggest this is the greatest Royal Rumble. And I can't compete with yours, but I think it's merited in maybe unforgettable. One of the best. Okay. It's hard to think. But yeah, anyway, before we crack on with the news, obviously I just would draw a bit of attention to the A to the K merch that we're sporting there. Yeah.
Merch.
So these are obviously the first two, and rightly owned by myself and Carl. And look absolutely awesome as well. I think we need to both thank our respective wives for that.
Well, they believe in us, which is more than we can say for ourselves. But if you're listening, then you believe in us too, and we appreciate it.
We do indeed. So we'll kick off with the Ringside report then, Carl, which has a few bits. Let's say.
A couple of noteworthy pieces.
A couple of things that have happened this week. So we'll kick it off with one that's probably been massively overshadowed by now. I'll be honest with you, Cal. Now this, I'm not trying to buy into the suggestion that's being made. To be honest with you, but it makes for a bit of an interesting article because I never even knew about this chap. And basically, what it is, we have a chap named. I'm going to try and say this right. Armando Alejandro Montalvo, maybe you said that right.
Was it not Estrada? Armando Alejandro Estrada. Was he not the? He was Umaga's little assistant or something.
I want to say it was Umaga, yeah, but he was definitely a WWE. But this chap, sadly, is not one and the same. He is someone who WWE have had previous dealings with, let's say. Now, very sadly, he does, and it's undisclosed, or certainly from what I've read, as to what he suffers with, but he suffers with some sort of mental illness. And as, let's say, he quite enjoys the Performance Centre. And they've had some issues and some hassle with him in the past, to the point that back in 2015, he was actually shot by, I want to say, a sheriff or whatever they have over there, a police person. Over in Orlando at the PC. Now, it's an Orange County deputy, outside of the Performance Centre back in 2015 due to incidents. Now, he has since returned quite recently. And the reason this one has been noted, or one of the main reasons this one has been noted, it was, I want to say it was June the 1st, actually, it was a couple of weeks ago now, but he was actually greeted by both Dana Brooke and Lacey Evans, who the suggestion was that they potentially were egging him on, but again, I don't know. You never know how to deal with someone who, like, he was utterly convinced he should be in the WWE and that sort of thing. He loves the industry, but in a kind of a bizarre way, let's say. So some of the suggestion is that maybe they weren't treating somebody with mental instabilities in the best way. But again, I don't know. I think maybe they were just trying to diffuse the situation a little bit as well, given the guy has, like, he's been shot there before. So maybe, things have a tendency to escalate and they were trying to de-escalate, let's say.
Yeah,
But yeah, it seems like this sort of incident happened, and sadly, I say sadly, was somewhat overshadowed by a lot of the other stuff that's gone on. But yeah, it seems like he was sort of rambling about looking for the opportunity to be on Raw or be on the show in some way, and they were sort of, again, I don't want to say they were encouraging him, but they were sort of talking to him about it, and I do think they were trying to de-escalate the situation. To be fair, have you read much on this one, Carl?
yeah. I mean, I saw a few different ramblings on it, but I mean, you've kind of already said the guy's been shot there before, so
Yeah.
if there's any indication not to let him around the building or around the performers, that would be it. But yeah, it's hard. He clearly has got some sort of like mental health issues or something, and neither Dana or Lacey are obviously trained in that kind of how do you deal with a case like that. What I'm sure they only meant goodwill and stuff like that. But
Yeah, and well, I
it's
don't want to be speaking out of turn, but I believe Lacey is involved in some sense with people who suffer with PTSD and stuff like that. She's a pioneer for that kind of thing, obviously serving in the armed forces, so she has a connection to sort of mental health, or a bit of a passion towards helping in that sense. But it doesn't qualify you to know how to deal with that situation. But again, it's the reason I think that I don't think there was anything malicious to it. I think they were just trying to talk to him rather than sort of push him away and maybe escalate the situation. And really, all we can do is hope that he does get the help he needs. Really.
Yeah, definitely. It's a hard one, isn't it? Because like, what do you do? Like, it's a crazy and scary thought sometimes to think that anyone can turn up anywhere and threaten anything. So it's like, what?
Yeah.
How much security do you have to have in place all the time? Stuff like that. So
it's interesting as well, because obviously the performance center, you can find out where it is relatively easy. And whilst there are big stars going there, it's nowhere near to the scale that it is right now because of everything that's happened with COVID-19. They're not on the road, they're not traveling, they're always at the performance center. So it's one time when you go, if you're a stalker, you can be pretty sure there's going to be some big stars at the PC at the moment. So it must be a bit of a scary thing, really, in that sense. And you like to think that the security's on points because of that. And I'm not saying the other people are dispensable in some way. It's more just that the bigger stars draw attention, don't they? Whereas some of your performance center talent are a bit more unknown at that point. So yeah, it's definitely got more of an eye on it at the minute as well, the PC.
Yeah, defo. It's a it's as you've already said, it's very easy to find. You don't exactly put it off the radar. It's literally right on in the middle of Orlando, not far off Winter Park. So it's a very easy location to find.
Yeah.
So
well, it's like WWE headquarters, isn't it? If you want to, not that you could get anywhere near the front of the building, but if you wanted to drive past and have a look at the building, you certainly bloody could. And I think that's probably the situation with the PC now, that the security must be beefed up at this point, because there's some when you consider the value they put in people, like the amount of money they pay certain stars, that's a lot of money to sort of protect, isn't it? So you like to think the security is beefed up at that point.
Fingers crossed.
So Carl, what have you got for us?
So the next item on the list this week is around Kevin Owens. So he has actually refused now to show up for future Raw tapings. So what actually happened was, a few days ago, as we've seen reported now by the WWE, it was a developmental talent. It actually tested positive for COVID. And that, there's already a couple of stars who have said, do you know what, I'm not going to come back. Roman Reigns is a prime example of that. He just got some new babies and stuff. So it's a very sensitive time. And Kevin Owens, very much a family man. Obviously, he's got 2 kids as well. He basically decided that he isn't going to take the chance, and he's not going to he's basically refused to come and work Raw until everyone's been tested and everything's kind of all, at bay a little bit. So it's one of them, from all kind of, all intents and purposes, there's no kind of grudges or anything held against Kevin Owens for this decision. There are a couple of other stars who have done the same, but yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. I think he certainly stuck in. I understand Roman Reigns sort of stepping back when he did, because obviously he had the post leukemia thing as well. I believe his immune system might have been lower than others. Yeah. Not being a doctor, not to surprise you there, Carl. But so I can understand him really not want to take the risk and think of his family first. Obviously, we heard about the likes of I want to say it was the Daniel Bryan isolated himself after WrestleMania because he didn't want to miss Mania, but he didn't want to risk his family. So he took an approach of isolating himself from his family after the Mania just to get that done. A lot of people have shown dedication to the company, and Kevin Owens, just as much as anyone else, because he's stuck in there till this point. And you got to imagine at that point you might even be thinking to yourself, well, you know what? They've got the screens up. We've kept the isolation, we kept the testing. WWE are on point for this sort of thing, but then suddenly you get this positive test and you think, oh shit, do you know what I mean? Because despite all the measures WWE are putting in place, that still happened, and it doesn't matter how sort of soon they've caught them. There's been some level of exposure there. So who have they potentially passed that on to? We just don't know. And I don't even think they've named who. Obviously, they'll know, but I don't think to the public it's been named who the Performance Center talent was. All that they've said is that it's a Performance Center talent. So it just shows you that the risk is still there. I don't think WWE have done anything particularly wrong in the way they've been trying to manage it, but I can totally understand him going, I'll take a step back at this point until we're fully sure. And I think WWE from the off, when all this kicked off, said, if anyone wants to not attend, they won't hold any grudge. And bar the massive layoffs, they seem to have kept to that. Bar the 19 people they sacked, they seem to have kept to the word.
Yeah, so that's
I don't mean to be flippant. I'm sure that was necessary anyway. But no, to be fair, like people, like they've not, other than not mentioning him, like Roman Reigns, they very specifically were like, no, we're not going to talk about him because he can't be on the show. So there's no point sort of mentioning to people what they can't have, I guess. So other than that, I don't think they've been particularly difficult with anyone from what I've been told. Certainly in terms of the big stars. So I think Kevin will be fine. I think he's made the right call for his family as well, to be fair.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, hopefully it's a blessing for him as well, because he's come back and it's been very underwhelming. So hopefully,
the only disappointment for me though, I was really all for him versus Apollo. Eventually, I really wanted that, and I think that's probably going to get sidelined now.
Yeah, possibly.
They might have taped some stuff, but they won't have taped that match.
No, I don't mean any disrespect or anything to Apollo either, but I think Owens is bigger than that, and I was shocked with him coming off that feud that he had with Rollins to being back in the US title scene, but not even like really in it, just like a sideline to it. And for me, it was a proper underwhelming return for him. So hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, it was this too many cooks thing for me though, because I think he could have easily give Apollo the rub. Even if Apollo hadn't come out with the title, they were putting on a fantastic match together. And the fact that they have to keep throwing different fucking things in the mix, and now suddenly we've got Andrade and Garza and everyone involved, that was what ruined it. I think had it have just been a good program between Owens and Apollo, and I don't even care who won at that point. Like you say, it's logical that Kev wins because he's the bigger star, and it doesn't feel right to have him lose to Apollo right after Rollins. But even so, the match they were putting on that really elevated Apollo for me anyway, and I wish I'd have got to see the full fucking match instead of it turning into a random tag match.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can definitely see where you're coming from. It was something I was looking forward to as well, but who knows what happens when he does decide to come back, whether it is back into that scene or whether they go a different direction with it. But either way, I just hope it's something that is is a good watch, and he's not just playing like cheerleader or playing second fiddle to something.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree. So that being said, I'll bring the next one to the table. Sadly, Carl, this is probably the biggest one of the night, the most difficult one of the night. Now this, and a lot of people will have already heard about this, and this is stemmed from the speaking out movement. I believe it's being coined now. Obviously, the hashtag was hashtag speaking out, and this has been, I think, initially started in relation to the British wrestling scene, and various female wrestlers speaking out about, again, because the list has become so extensive and so exhaustive, that it's varying degrees and levels of sexual misconduct, I suppose, in some senses. I mean, even going as bad as a suggestion of rape. So it's an horrendous series of accusations, all obviously differing in levels to one another. But I mean, it's included a lot of notable stars, not just from the British wrestling scene, but since I mean, we've been following this today, even, and we've got the most recent one we've just been talking about, Carl. That was, I think, about 4 hours ago. Is Sami Guevara. So I mean, I'll start with mentioning the Sami Guevara one. That's he has, to his own admission, at this point, he's not denied the suggestion, although I believe it was something he said on air on a podcast. But he's mentioned the suggestion that basically that he either he would like to or he would rape Sasha Banks. Again, a crass comment from an idiot, basically. And he has come out and he's basically said, he said it, the tweet he's put out is a lot more detailed than I'm only going to paraphrase, but essentially saying that they were wrong at the time, they're wrong now. He fully understands, that that's not the type of conduct he should have, and he totally regrets it. He offers his apologies to Sasha as well, that sort of thing. And even Sasha's come back and said, look, she spoke to him directly. They've opened a dialogue in that sense. He's offered his apologies to her. She's made quite a powerful statement on her Twitter saying that essentially it doesn't matter the sort of the context or the approach to these things. These sort of words and these sort of suggestions can cause damage to the movement. And hopefully this isn't too damaging to his career, Carl, because I'm not going to try and sort of jump on the Twitter sort of approach and be like, nah, condemn him, ban him. He's a young lad, he's an idiot. We've discussed this, Carl, in some length, that it's not something. It's not the type of joke, let's say, because that's what I think he was intending with it. It's not the type of joke we would make or ever would have made, even as teens, even as stupid teens. There's no approach to it that you can say, oh, he was just being a lad. He was being a knob. But at the same time, there were crass comments ridiculous comments that he shouldn't have made, and he, hopefully, by the sounds of it, he's completely grown out of that. And we are fans of him. He's great at AEW, and we can only hope that this sort of gets resolved in a way that satisfies all parties, I suppose. AEW at the minute, with Sami, and I'll mention another name now of Jimmy Havoc, who has also been part of these allegations. Now, I believe that is in some way different allegations, but in some way connected to his substance abuse issues as well. I think his suggestion was violence towards his partner at the time. But again, all different varying allegations here. Now, what the AEW's approach with both Jimmy Havoc and Sami Guevara has been to suspend indefinitely, but they've also sought to seek some sort of rehabilitation or sensitivity training or something along that line. So they're not just going, right, well, that's you, we're done with you now. They are trying to help, which is great. That is the approach they should be taking. We're never going to improve things if it's just a case of, right, cut ties, fuck them. And I'm not trying to be unfair to WWE, but the other example being WWE have released Jack Gallagher. And again, Jack Gallagher is another one who's been subject to the speaking out movement and been accused of varying things. The British wrestling scene has been particularly horrendous on this front. But they've gone full, forgive the crass way of putting it, Carl, but they've gone full Benoit with it. He doesn't. He does not exist to WWE now, Jack Gallagher. He is not in the alumni page. He has been wiped. So they've gone for that approach, which is an interesting approach to take. And again, you and I discussed this before we went on the air, and you made a good point that we don't know. We only know what the allegation is. We don't know what he's said to WWE behind the scenes. He could have fully admitted it, and they could have gone, no, that's not on. We don't know. And I'm not suggesting that that's what's happened, but it's a really strong approach for WWE to take, especially because two other massive names here are the Velveteen Dream, who has very recently suffered other allegations, and Matt Riddle, who, to be fair, he has come out and said that these were existing issues that he's had with this one particular person, and he totally denies it. And you got to wonder what the situation is with that, whether they've just, this particular person who seems to have something towards Riddle has just sought the opportunity now to throw something in the mix, because by all accounts, the issues Matt Riddle's been having have been since, I want to say 15, 16, and WWE have always known about it. So, but the reason I mention those two is because I can slightly understand the Matt Riddle one with WWE, but you wonder with WWE why they've not done anything with Velveteen Dream yet. And again, it could be purely down to the fact that Gallagher's admitted to it and these two have gone, no, it's a totally false accusation. You just don't know.
Yeah.
But
I think
very strange. Very, very strange day for wrestling in that sense, really.
Yeah, 100%. There's also been a lot of NXT UK stars as well who've been involved in this. Where,
of course, yeah, because a lot of them have come over from the British wrestling scene, haven't they? So, like, when you had your independents, your WCPWs and stuff like that, there was a few names that are now on NXT UK. Sorry, Carl, you're probably better covering those. I think you've sort of known the British wrestling scene better than I have.
Yes. So, obviously there's quite a few there. So there was one in El Guerrero who is over in NXT UK at the moment. Jordan Devlin. There's a good few really. Travis Banks as well, I think.
Yeah. No, I noted Joe Coffey and Will Ospreay, two names that I recognised as well from watching various independents. They're in the mix as well. One name I'd never known, Carl, was Joey Ryan. Do you know anything of Joey Ryan? I believe he was on Impact.
Do you know what? I don't really know much about him at all, but there seems to be a lot, like multiple cases, quite condemning stuff coming out about him.
I mean, I won't sort of detail it on air because it's quite a difficult read. But there's been tweets put out there, easy enough to find if you Google Joey Ryan's name, with some very serious allegations. And if I'm saying if true, I don't want to put down anyone who's coming forward. That's not the intent. But when I say if true, it's just to be clear that they are allegations at this point. But if it's true, that he's probably, from what I've read so far, the most horrendous on the list in terms of the allegations. And I know he was big in Impact, but I don't really follow TNA, so I don't know him too much as a wrestler. But it's insane. I mean, the list goes on and on, Carl. It's not worth listing them all, but there's quite a sizable list. Even names like Jim Cornette and Mrs. Cornette have been both listed on there as well. It's a crazy time.
It seems like it's just getting started. Like every day, there's like several new names that come to light, and you've already mentioned the kind of the level of some of the names that are coming out there. Even like stuff with Matt Riddle. Is obviously a case of there seems to be something else going on there where maybe someone's used the hashtag to try and do, I don't know, get.
No, this is a difficult thing because, like, you don't want to put if the girl's coming forward with something honest, you don't want to put it down. But at the same time, he's turning around and saying this is totally not true, and he's trying to. So we're trying to report on it with both sides. So we're by no means trying to lean one way or the other. But
it's crazy, isn't it? Because it's such a hard topic to cover because you don't really know how to talk about such a thing. Do you know what I mean? Where
that's the thing.
Like if you think about. Think of Sami now. Like, neither of us condone what he has said about Sasha Banks in any way, shape, or form. We would never have said it. He, ever, no matter how young we were, it's just not who we are as people. And so you can't condone it. And by no stretch am I saying, we're no longer going to support Sami. That's not the case. Like, Sami is a fantastic athlete. He's a fantastic, character, and I'm always going to back him. It's one of those things. He's done something when he was younger that was very silly, and he's put himself out on a public platform, which it's exactly like you and I today. Something could be brought up from our podcast in the future where we've said something off the cuff, and it's a very vulnerable position to put yourself into, go on the air and speak it and record what you're saying and stuff like that because times change. But it's one of those. I feel like
you've got. I think you've hit the nail on the head when you say about times changing, and this is by no means condoning this sort of topic or this way of being or this way of talking. But if you look at how big this list is, if you look at how normalized this seemed to be in the industry, you've got Sami Guevara back in, I think I want to say 2016. I think you said it might have been 2012, but you got Sami Guevara back then making comments publicly on a podcast. I'm sorry, I'm just going to find the date as well. Making comments rather publicly at the time. 2016 it was. And so this has been a few years. And at the time, I'm sure some people might have said something, but at the time it was not a big thing, whether it was because he weren't a big star or largely because I think, sadly, that seemed to be the culture backstage in the wrestling industry, that people could act and talk like this and no one said it. So I think on some level, it's like you say, it's like times have changed and there could be a lot of this shit coming out now because people just seem to normalize that kind of way of talking, which is not good. And I'm not saying it was, but like there must be people panicking now going, oh fuck, did I say something? And I didn't even know it was offensive at the time because that was just 100%. That was the world I was in. You wonder whether it's going to be a bit like that in some senses.
Yeah, definitely. And people are more vocal now than ever and will speak out on back movements and things like that. So it is a very it's a very vulnerable time, I think, for a lot of people. But, we talk about individuals, but talk about the company as well. Like, the locker room in WWE for years, you've had like Randy Orton shitting in Divas bags. You've had JBL kind of going into the showers with new guys and rubbing them up with soap. And if anybody told anyone about it, they'd be, fucking blackballed. It's like,
that's
what?
The thing. And it's like, this is the other problem as well, is that the culture become that normal because it's like, well, you don't want to ruin your chances in the business that you want to make a career out of. So people kept stum. Like, I believe JBL was quite bad for being a bully backstage.
Yeah, I mean, JBL was a prick, wasn't he?
As we've heard many a story, sadly, about JBL over the years. And that many that, they can't all be false. You can't deny them all. Do you know what I mean?
No.
And it's just, it seems like, and it's probably going to change for the better, but it seems like it's been a horrible culture in the past. And I'm hoping that if nothing else, this has been a case where the likes of Sami, and I'm not trying to lower Sami's down. I understand people being offended by it, so I'm not trying to just dismiss it, but I hope that people in a situation like Sami who've made comments can sort of learn from that and still progress in the business and mature from it. Whereas obviously you've got some like cases, actual suggestions of rape in here. So that, there's for me, there's no coming back from that. Like that kind of thing. That's taking action on those sort of stupid comments. That's not on. But
100%.
That's how varied this list is. That some are comments like Sami made, and some are actual things like that, actual action being taken. And hopefully. And I understand that people are offended and might not agree, but I'm hoping Sami's not too far gone, and he can. He can serve the suspension, he can take the punishment, he's give out the apologies, and he can learn from it, and hopefully still carry on in AEW, because he was a really good part of AEW for both of us, and hopefully we will see him on the screens again.
Yeah, definitely. I think to the point you've made then is, I think it's neither action, whether it's saying something like, oh, I would rape this person, versus someone actually trying to do the act. Neither action is ever something that would be condoned. But at the same time, a silly, childish comment on a podcast cannot be treated in the same light as someone physically trying to force themselves upon someone else. And neither of which are fine, and we do not condone either action.
Exactly.
But at the same time, I just feel like there's people who, like Twitter, especially, people latch onto these things. They're calling for Sami to be fired, and you can't ruin someone's life for a silly comment. And it was stupid, and it was in poor taste, and it was something that it's not okay. You can't say these things.
But like you say, he's by all accounts he's approached it from a sense of dark humor, which sadly exists. You can find dark humor all over the place, and like you say, it's not on, and we don't condone it. But hopefully it isn't like that's not the nail in the coffin for him. I'd hate to think his career was ruined through a stupid comment like that.
And I think as well, like, not to harp on the topic too much as well, but we're talking a lot about individuals here. You know, you think of the company of WWE, you think of the storylines and the angles over the years which they've run. You know, Katie Vick, you think about the time Kurt Angle was trying to rape Sharmell pretty much to get back a Booker T.
The
These things have
non-consensual
happened.
marriage of Stephanie McMahon.
Exactly, right? You know, which Vince himself is booking this, you know what I mean? So it's one of these things where it's so easy to jump on, you know, individuals and the bandwagon and the movement and stuff like that. And it's like, well, like, literally times have changed, and it was never okay then, but it's certainly not okay today.
Yeah, people are a lot more self-aware now. They're a lot more aware in every sense. But you know, social media has been a massive impact on that. You know, back in the Attitude Era when this sort of shit was being booked, you wouldn't get that immediate feedback. Do you know what I mean? Like, they can look back now and go, that Katie Vick thing was horrendous. We shouldn't have done that. But in today's day and age, if they try to run with something like that, you'd know about it on Twitter within a couple of minutes.
Yeah, easily. Definitely.
So it's a different world now. It really is.
Yeah. But I think, you know, this whole situation is going to be interesting to see how it progresses. Hopefully we don't hear of too many more kind of cases coming out, because I mean, if they've happened, then hopefully we do, because it's good to talk about them and it's good to get them out in the air. But
yeah, no, I get what you mean. It's from a sense of, like, for us, when it's people we like and people we enjoy in the industry, it's something, like you say, it's something that should come out and we should hear. But it's still like, you're gutted every time you see a name you like. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can't get around that. Like, the minute I saw Sami Guevara's name come up, I messaged you, because that's gutting for both of us, because we were both are big fans of him. So, you know, like you say, for however long this carries on, imagine like getting bigger names. Like, no offense to Sami, but imagine getting bigger names. Imagine getting some proper big WWE names coming out as people start getting more sort of like, because it snowballs, doesn't it? As more people, you get a bit more confidence to go, well, I'm not the only one, and it snowballs. So we're sat here like, oh, fucking hell.
Like, I posted the other day on our Instagram a very risque joke. It was a bit of a pun, right? Of Ric Flair, who is well known as someone who goes around on aircrafts and everything, goes into the bathroom, comes out in nothing but his robe, and just starts windmilling his dick around. And honestly, it's like, Carl, right, you can't get a bigger star than Ric Flair, and this guy was doing this.
No, that's the thing. But go back and look at Evolution's original, and I mean original before Batista was even in the video. Go back and look at their original entrance video, the VT for the Evolution. And the whole idea of them was they were like sort of jet setting, seducing women and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, and Rick has always sort of portrayed that image, and hopefully it is a character thing and an image thing. But like you say, that sort of stuff that you hear about where he's you know, he's doing that, that's like, that's he's from a totally different fucking world, isn't he? But it's worrying when you hear things like that.
It's one of them. For me, it's just like, you know, if you're going to back the movement, then back the movement. You know, you can't shy away from the likes of legends like Ric Flair and stuff who do this behavior. Do you know what I mean? It's like, if it is, if you're backing it and you're saying it's a problem, then, you know, you need to look at these things. You need to look at WWE and the content they put out. You need to look at Ric Flair, you know, his actions in life and stuff like that.
Sadly, that's why I think you're right, though, that this is going to keep going for a while now. Like, there's going to be more and more coming out, because I think it's as people are building up and as you see how big the movement's getting, I think that's when people will probably be instilled with a bit more confidence to sort of mention bigger stars. And I'm by no means suggesting that, all these bigger stars are up to it as well. But, you know, I do sit here thinking, what names are we going to see next? Because the names are getting bigger. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, crazy times. So should we try and change the mood, Cal, a little bit?
Yes.
And talk about other stuff in wrestling. Sorry, do you want to mention the next one, Cal?
So the next one on the list for this week. So you may have noticed a lack of Bianca Belair on Raw over the last few weeks. You know, she got brought over not long after WrestleMania, got pushed a little bit as kind of a big star, but then she's just kind of been nothing, like, to completely disappear from our screens over the last few weeks. And basically, there's no kind of real big reason or anything for that. It's just literally a case of the fact that they put the profits in to an angle, which I absolutely loathe, with the Viking Raiders, which is some crazy, supposedly funny, silly angle that, basically they just don't think Bianca Belair fits into, which I don't think anyone fits into it because it's a load of shite. But at least we know now why Bianca Belair is not being...
hate me that one, Carl. It's not all bad. Some of it's been really good. I dare say,
really?
Montez
really
Ford
good?
is growing on me, honest to God.
Montez Ford is like a really poor man's Damon Wayans. He tries to copy.
He reminds me so much of Damon
Wayans'
son. I can't believe it.
And he just, it doesn't fly. He's not funny.
He's growing on me.
Just throwing out there. No,
he's growing. Anyway, but what I find disappointing about this article, though, Carl, I don't know if you'll agree or not, but Bianca Belair was a big deal in her own right on NXT. And then she's come over to the main roster and they've gone, well, you don't really suit this skit, so we're just going to not use you. And it's like, yeah, but she wasn't all about the Street Profits. She wasn't even a member of the Street Profits. She just happens to be married to Montez. I hope I'm saying that right. Yeah. It is Montez, isn't it? I feel like I've just decided his name's Montez.
Montez Ford.
It was Montez Ford. Yeah, and it's like, well, you're married to him, so obviously we're going to stick you together. And then, well, we've not got nothing for you in these skits, so just go and have a coffee or whatever. It just seems a bit of a shame because when we're dealing with a women's roster that's quite weak on Raw at the minute, in my opinion, like all right, they're all about pushing Nia Jax. Fair enough. But we keep seeing Charlotte rocking up and getting involved in various ways, but we could be using a bit of variety there. I haven't seen Liv Morgan for a few weeks, and you don't see Bianca Belair at all, apparently. And it's like, well, use these people, fucking use them. But that's the biggest disappointment in that sense. I understand they're not being involved in those skits, but to not use it at all is like, okay, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I don't feel like she should fall by the wayside just because, a fella is in a different angle. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know she was in and around the Street Profits and they were kind of a little bit together, a little bit in unison, but to just drop her like a bad habit, just don't have her be the wife of Montez Ford and the set, just have her be her own person and just let her be.
The way, like, that Seth and Becky are together, WWE, but you don't actually book them together because they're their own wrestlers. Kind of like that.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's so funny, that kind of stuff, the little smart things. Like, I still remember to this day, there was a segment where I think they'd all just battered Rollins or something, and Becky came out in the next segment, and Kevin Owens looks at it and it's just like, and it's like, it's just so funny because obviously we know, but like to the casual fan, they're like, oh, I don't get it. But
I remember that actually. That was quite funny. But it's little things like that, and it's like, I mean, you could argue that was a bit poor working on WWE's side as well to have her come out immediately after that beating, but yeah, crazy. Right, so for the next one for me, Carl, this one, basically, Fox are not happy with WWE, Carl. Fox are not happy with WWE taking the piss. Which, apologies to our increasing American demographic, which apparently is tipped over now. We're more American than British now in terms
Why
of
do you listen to us?
So apologies for that, because I believe that according to various Americans I've seen being interviewed on British TV, taking the piss isn't a thing you've got over there as a term. So apologies, but that, it was me, a play on words from a British term of them messing around. But basically, Fox were not aware of and not happy with the segment that Sheamus and Jeff did quite recently on SmackDown, in which Jeff threw a jar of his own urine at Sheamus. To the point that Fox have actually edited that out now. If you watch that on the I don't know if you. I feel like I saw it live, but I suppose I'm not watching it on Fox. I don't know how it works when they bring it over to this country. But yeah, if you watch it on Fox, by all accounts, they cut away when he throws it now. Not that it makes much difference. You knew it was a jar of piss, and you knew it ended up all over him. But yeah, they weren't happy with that take. They weren't in keeping with their sort of network programming. So how do you find this, Carl? Do you think this is a bad omen for their relationship with Fox? Because they constantly like to say on Fox nowadays.
I don't know. It's a weird one, isn't it? Because when the Fox deal got announced, that was a big deal. It's better than what the Raw deal is. Who are they with now? USA? I don't know
USA.
what network.
I've got something to say about that too. But USA Network, they're with you.
But once that Fox deal was announced, SmackDown initially became the bigger show because it was on the bigger network. So it's interesting to me that they have taken such a, because it's not like over the top, is it? It's a little bit poor taste, literally.
To be honest, what makes me laugh with network
someone,
like I've not been a fan of SmackDown for a few weeks now for stupid shit like this. But what makes me laugh with network execs is like you can have Otis on there and you can have people just making constant fat jokes and fart jokes and stuff like that. But you bring you bring what looks like piss into this. No, we're not happy. And it's like it's the same level of humor. It's the same level of offense. Like I found it all kind of fucking annoying, to be honest with you. But that's where they draw the line is a jar of piss.
Apparently so. At least they know. So we won't see any more. They're not going to go down the excrement scene next week now. So.
But sadly, and I'll mention it on SmackDown, but we're not done with Sheamus and Jeff, are we?
Seriously? That's still going?
Well, apparently, yeah. I mean, beating the shit out of him twice just wasn't enough for Sheamus, so we're not done. Yeah, so that's that one. A quick one, Carl, but Fox don't like piss.
Apparently not, which is interesting.
Apparently not.
So the next one on the list is probably a very sentimental one to yourself, being such a big Undertaker fan. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of the takes, but he was probably your favorite of all time. He basically, in the last episode of The Last Ride documentary, basically alluded to the fact that he's got nothing left to prove now, almost hinting at the fact that he's pretty much retired. He's at a place in his life where he feels like he's achieved everything. He's just fought one of the best in the business in AJ Styles in the Boneyard match, and he's got into his motorcycle and ridden off into the sunset, if you will. So, how do you feel about this news?
I mean, in some senses, it's gutting, right? And it's gutting because, like, as a wrestling fan, and he's been in the industry such a long time that he was there before I was, right? But I grew up with Undertaker essentially. Like he was always there. He was a staple on the shows. All right, he got increasingly less as time went on, but he was always there. He always turned up, And to know that that's never gonna, or to know that potentially that's we're not gonna see him, is gutting because that's a massive part of my childhood with wrestling. But could you ask for a better way to go out? Probably not. No, I mean, for me, ideally, I would have always liked the streak to have gone unanswered. That would have been the idea. I know we've talked extensively about how we would book the streak, and I have ideas of how they could have booked it. I think we both agree that Shawn could have been a good shout because those matches were incredible. But for me, the absolute best way would have been the streak never ends, and the same finish, he drives off into the sunset, because we both mentioned at the time when we watched the Boneyard match that felt fairly conclusive. I think it's mentioned when we've talked WrestleMania on the podcast. It felt like it was an end because he just sort of rode away. And the fact that he's sort of clarified that, and I don't think anyone expected it. We've all been watching the Last Ride, I think it's called, isn't it? We've all been watching it. I don't think anyone expected him to kind of end it in that note where he's like, yeah, I'm done. I think he alluded to the fact that, if Vince made the call and he needed him, would he do it? And it was kind of a question mark. But the fact that he has no desire to get in the ring feels fairly sort of conclusive. I mean, he's nothing, and with all due respect to him, the last few years, you kind of go, I hope this doesn't start tainting Undertaker. Do you know what I mean? You got I don't know, like the Roman Reigns match in particular, and it's not a slight at Roman Reigns, but the Roman Reigns match in particular, you could see he was struggling with. Admittedly, after he'd had the surgery and come back, he ruined John Cena, and he's looked fine ever since. Not obviously, he's still an older wrestler, but he's looked a lot better. So that sort of took some of the fear away from me. But when you're just like, well, time makes fools of us all, doesn't it? And we've seen a lot of older wrestlers, like, I don't know, like Ric Flair turning up on Raw to get involved, for instance. And you're like, well, they can't do a lot in the ring anymore, and it almost becomes a bit of a shell of the former selves. And I'll always be happy to see him. You know, if he turns up on WrestleMania just to sort of say hello, like Hulk Hogan did that year, where he just turned up and was like, "Hey, brother," and then did nothing else. Fine, sound. But yeah, I think this is a good way to end it, in all fairness. And this is coming from someone who would have happily seen him wrestle for the rest of his life.
Well, do you know what? That being said, I think he's full of shit. He's not retired. 100% he's not retired. The fact he said, you know, oh well, if Vince ever needs a favor, like the whole thing we've seen in this whole Last Ride documentary is he will do anything for Vince, and Vince will always need a favor, right? So there's no way.
Vince is like, Taker, can you hide this body?
Pretty much. You know, I've spilled some crumbs on my desk there, Taker. Will you just come in with the fucking polish? No, but seriously, like Undertaker will not go out in a boneyard match. He will go out on his back, as is tradition in the business, in front of a crowd. So if WrestleMania Hollywood goes ahead and it's in front of a crowd, he is going to be there. He's going to be there. But I do fundamentally believe after his next match, he'll be done. Like, I think Vince will convince him, do you know what? It was great that what you had with AJ and stuff, and it'd be a great way to go out, but the fans never got to see it live. There'll be a WrestleMania moment for you to retire in front of them fans, and Taker will do it, because Taker will do anything for Vince. So I don't believe he's gone, personally. Okay. It's one of these, as a wrestler, you can't retire. You can't do it. Terry Funk's retired about 18 times.
There's a whole film about it, Carl. We've all seen it.
You can't do it. So I don't think Taker's any different, unfortunately.
Sadly, I think you're right. As much as I truly believe what I just said about 5 seconds ago, I've come to realize while you were talking, and you're like, nah, he's not done. That, like, we not long ago reported on one of our news articles that he signed a new deal with them for until he's like 70 odd. Now that was not necessarily, you know, in the ring kind of deal, but he's still signed to WWE. Come to think of it, so like you say, all it'll take is a nod from Vince, which we've had in the past. I think because I'm not being unfair to Taker. I'm going to stick with what I originally said. Love it. Hope that was a retirement. It's a beautiful way to go out. All that. But do you remember that one? Was it Roman where he left his hat and gloves in the ring, and that felt a little bit like he was passing the torch?
Yeah, I think it might.
And that didn't stick, did it? So you may have a point.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of them. Like, for me, and I'm not saying it just to be selfish. I just think you can't retire like by a fucking video feed, and you know what I mean. Like, that is a moment that the fans deserve, is to actually witness him in person retire. Like, you know that the feelings and the emotions that he elicits when he comes to the ring and stuff like that. And you saw people crying when he left his hat and gloves in the ring that time. He still came back. I feel like he still needs to go out, and as is tradition in the business, he needs to go out on his back to someone, put them over, and retire, and just finally go away. And I don't think the Boneyard match was it for me. I'm calling it now.
Okay, I'll respect that, Carl. I'll respect that. Time will tell. I'll see you at WrestleMania Hollywood.
See you at Hollywood.
37 or whatever the fuck number we're on now. I don't even know.
Who knows now? Who knows?
So the next one, Carl. I mentioned that we had some stuff to say about the USA Network as well. Now this one I find quite interesting, because USA Network were only told at the last minute of Paul Heyman's firing, and by all accounts are not happy with Paul Heyman's firing. And the reason being because USA Network, unlike Vince McMahon, fully understood that the ratings were going to drop, because you need to build new talent, because a lot of the older talent are no longer there. Stuff that anyone can see who's watching the fucking thing.
Well, yeah, obviously.
And they knew Heyman needed time, so they held no ill will with Heyman. They were not concerned about the ratings drop, because they knew what had to happen. Now, Heyman's been fired, and what has been the knee-jerk reaction? The more you think about it, what have we seen nothing but on Raw since Heyman's been fired? We've seen Ric Flair, Christian, Randy Orton, Edge. These are all names that I've heard of since, easily early 2000s. So they've gone right back to the old staple of let's rely on older talent. Now, they are still running with a couple of things, like the Drew McIntyre stuff and Apollo. But to me, it almost seems like they've straight away done a fucking U-turn on Heyman's approach of trying to build new talents up and just throwing legends at it where they can. And the USA Network, again, they've been quite outspoken that they understand that new talent has to be built, so they weren't overly concerned. But what do you make of them not being happy with Heyman's firing? Do you think they'll turn around when they see the ratings increase, or do you think they'll actually still have the sense to go, well, they only increase them because you're putting like Tease and Christian coming back, or you had Ric Flair turn up this week, for instance, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I think the network will be happy as long as the ratings are up. I don't think they'll care too much. But you know, the fundamentals are if you're not building any new stars, as you've said, then it's going to be hard to keep that going for much longer. You've already said, like you just said, Taker's probably gone potentially for good now. You know, unless he does come back at Mania. You know, there's not many of the big draws left anymore, really.
Yeah. Look at Christian. Christian is a prime example. They've blatantly teased Christian coming back, as we know. Talking about last week and from what happened, we'll talk about it this week as well. But they blatantly teasing Christian coming back, right? But I remember when Edge was coming back and they interviewed Christian, and he said he's done. He had no desire to get back in the ring. He's not got the same like motivation in him as Edge. He doesn't feel like he got sort of robbed of it like Edge did. And then suddenly we've got this where, by all accounts, there's a suggestion that Christian isn't actually medically cleared to have a match, but they're trying to tease all that. And I think all they're doing is going to Christian, come along while Edge is off screen for a bit with these, you know, issues. Did I even point at me triceps then? Which are the triceps, Carl? Help me out here.
That one.
We'll go with that one, yeah. It's triceps. But yeah, so they've ended up in a jam because of these injuries, and they've gone to Christian. Well, you know, let's see what we can get going here. And Christian's gone, yeah, okay, paycheck. And I'd be surprised if we actually see him in a match, because I do think it has just been that. It's been to carry on the story, to build segments, and I'd be very surprised if he is actually medically cleared. Stranger things have happened, don't get me wrong, but I don't know, I'm just there looking at it like, well, you know, it just feels like they've done it to go, well, let's get a big name on there, and that's the type of thing that is concerning. And I don't know, hopefully we all get behind the likes of Drew McIntyre enough, you know. It's funny actually, because it seems like SmackDown are doing a better job of building new talent than Raw.
Yeah, no, agreed. To be fair, which at the same time, you know, you've kind of got a question, because Heyman has been in charge for a while now, and you know, fair dues, we've had a lot of Angel Garza, a lot of Andrade in our faces. We've had a lot of Apollo, Shayna Baszler for a bit. You know, there has been attempts there, but you know, as you've said, the last couple of weeks has literally just been harping on, you know, looking at old school stars. You know, like this week with Christian and Ric Flair, and it was just, yeah, I don't know. It's a very good point you make, I think.
Yeah, I'm eagerly awaiting D-Generation X's return. That's always one you can pull out of the bag. They're knocking around backstage anyway.
God, don't tempt fate.
That soundtrack's just, it's ready. It's loaded in the audio mixer. Kevin
Dunn's
saw it
got briefly
it there.
at fucking In Your House takeover.
Exactly.
The old AOL skit. So
it tickled me that segment was all like, it kind of like, you probably had, again, they were going blatantly for the AOL skit and alluding to previous In Your House, but it reminded me of that scene in Zoolander where they just couldn't figure the computers out. I don't know if you ever saw that. Do you remember that in the film?
Yeah.
They ended up throwing the computer and everything. The way they were, it just reminded me of that, to be honest. Not to digress, obviously.
No, of course not. And you can tune into A to the K Movie Talk next week.
Yes, there'll be a whole different set of merch.
So then I think the last one maybe on the list, unless you've got any more, is around, and I may need to lean on you a little bit for this one, around Randy Orton has come out addressing the whole you know, debacle on Twitter between him and Tommaso Ciampa around the whole fucking leg slap class and stuff like that. Yes. Apparently he's saying you've got to look at the bigger picture. And he's now similar to his on-screen character almost. It seems like he's got the welfare of the talent, you know, at heart. You know, Ciampa's had a neck surgery, and he's basically, I don't really know how this relates to leg slapping. So, you know, you want to fill me on this, but he's basically trying to allude to the fact that, you know, NXT isn't the main show, and they're going out there and doing just as many shows as the main Raw and SmackDown, and putting the bodies at risk and stuff like that. And Yeah, I don't know. It was a bit of a weird thing to say.
I think Randy was putting it across as tactfully as maybe Randy could, but and again, from what I gather, the original leg slap thing I think was Randy trying to be playful, but Tommaso sort of fired back, basically insinuating that Randy's matches put you to sleep, and pointing out that Tommaso takes greater risks, and I think that's where the responses come from. That Randy's saying, well, with all due respect, taking greater risks at an NXT level is fucking stupid. Like, he was being playful with the leg slap thing, but it's like you get paid less, you work to a smaller crowd, and you're less of a name, and you're going to take risks at this level. When you've had your neck surgically repaired, you're going to potentially fuck your whole career up and have to find a whole new career, and you haven't even done it on the grandest stage. And I think that's he alluded to Tommaso being like a big fish in a small pond, and he could be a big fish in a big pond. And he should be sort of at this point now. He should be trying to get himself to the main roster, and I think he was almost suggesting that he'd understand more if Tommaso was taking bumps like power bombs onto the ring apron and stuff on the likes of Raw, the biggest show, or on like a big pay-per-view. There's some suggestion as well that you get a longer contract with NXT. I think there's suggestion that you can sign a 4-year contract with NXT and you don't necessarily get that long on the bigger roster. But again, Randy was saying like that your chance to shine is there. And I kind of get where Randy's coming from. Like, Randy's at a point in his life where he's not going to take any big risks. He put on a hell of a match with Edge. I'm not going to disrespect that, but he's not going to take any big risks to do any big spots. He's not like a nutter like Shane McMahon, where he's like, I want to jump off something huge. He's like, well, I'm not going to injure myself. I'm here for a paycheck now, essentially. And I think, and I do kind of get where he's coming from. I just think Randy doesn't understand why you take such a big risk, especially when you've been injured at an NXT level. And on some level, I get the counter argument as well, in the sense that you've got to be noticed to get to the bigger fish. You can't just decide that you're going to be on Raw. So you've got to pull big stunts and be popular to get there. So you kind of have to take the risk. So I get the counter argument, but I can see Randy's point that it's like, well, especially for Tommaso, who I don't think he's anything to prove at NXT now. So doesn't necessarily have to take big bumps.
The thing is, right, Randy's never worked the indie scene, right? Nope. He's never worked the independents. Ciampa and everyone else was taking probably bigger risks to crowds of like 50, 100 people, right? To someone like Ciampa, NXT, getting the viewership it has is the big leagues, do you know what I mean? And it's somewhere where he's got the platform to be the character he wants, where if he goes to the main roster, there's very good likelihood that he'll be then turned into some sort of comedy gimmick, or he'll be just like fucking just there. Like, you look at like Cesaro and Nakamura and people like that who are just kind of doing nothing at the minute on the main roster. So for me, for Orton to say like, oh well, why would you bother taking Rip, like, that just screams to me of someone who is Bob Orton's son, who gone straight to WWE, has become a multi-time champion, and like he has phoned it in most of his life, and I think he's open about that as well, which is fine, But Ciampa's not been born into wrestling family. He's not, he hasn't had that kind of silver spoon thing. And for some wrestlers, they are so in love with the craft and the sport of it that they will literally go out there and kill themselves for 10 people in a crowd because it's what they love to do. Whereas Orton will phone it in as long as he can because he's getting a paycheck at the end of the day.
But you see, this is the funny thing, that you do wonder whether this is a work. We're reading this, and it might be a work because this fully keeps with the character he's currently portraying. Especially, this rings true to everything Edge has been saying about him phoning it all in. Mm-hmm. So it's almost parallels it perfectly, that you think, is it going to be a work? And Tommaso's heading towards the main roster, and he's going to feud with Randy. It'd be incredibly well put together if it was WWE doing this, because to start something on social media and pay it off would be it'd be something I've not seen them do successfully ever.
I was going to say, it doesn't sound like something they would do. If it happens, it's probably purely by chance. But the Randy Orton of old, like, don't forget, Randy Orton got thrown onto a shitload of thumbtacks by Mick Foley. It's not. We're not saying I'm not saying the guy has phoned it in from day one. But
he's willing to put a big match on.
Yeah, he's literally at the point in his career now. Like, don't get me wrong, weeks ago he had a fantastic match with Edge, and it was, really, by his standards, was really good. But he's definitely at the point now where he is there just because, he's legend status pretty much, and he's getting a pretty decent paycheck to just, go through life.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to. So yeah.
Just comes in, puts the baby oil on, does what he's asked.
Exactly.
I
tried that in my line of work. Didn't go down the same way, but
no, it's has a different effect for some reason.
Yeah, you think of flying in office, right? But it's what it is.
But it's all cool now, Carl. Most of us are working from home. Do what you want. You be you, man.
That's it. Tomorrow, on tomorrow's Zoom call, I'm going to be there, nothing but baby oil. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah. Got to dress for who you want to be. So that, I think, is pretty much it for the Ringside report. Luckily, we got to end on a bit more of a fun note than some of the incredibly horrific things we've been reading in the news lately.
This week's episode is brought to you by floriday.co.uk, where you can get all the latest news about Florida, Disney, and Universal Studios, as well as valuable tips and touring plans to get the most out of your Florida holiday. That's floriday.co.uk, the sunshine state of mind.
Well, hello, Carl and Anthony. Hey, it's the hardcore legend Mick Foley saying hello. What a beautiful afternoon it is. Wow, gorgeous May afternoon. There's a view of the river at the Foley compound. Just want to say hello to you guys and let you know that I'm looking forward to listening to you on A to the K, the podcast. I am not yet exposed to much in the world of podcasting, but I think I'm going to start. I hear great things about you guys. I appreciate you being fans. I'm going to go out on a limb and just guess that you guys are big wrestling fans. So I'm going to thank you for your support over the years. Have a nice day.